and gentlemen, I got a little bit of a problem. The future of my personal favorite faction of the game, the Imperial Troopers, is kind of in a limbo land right now. For better or for worse. Today what we're going to talk about is a few things regarding the new Scout Trooper. Yeah, I know it's been like a week and a half since this came out, but you know, we're talking about it today. That's all that matters. CG kind of pulled the rug on us on a few things, took away the Dark Trooper from Veers, but at the same time, Beskar Gideon's coming. So what I want to do today is basically highlight some gameplay of the Scout Trooper while we discuss the current landscape of where Imperial Troopers are. Now, the other day, we unlocked the brand new Scout Trooper, and we know at the minimum, Scout Trooper is going to be used for the Galactic Legend layout requirement needed at Relic 7, and of course, going to be used for the brand new raid coming out, taking place on Endor later on this year. So we already know this character's got a fundamental place for the long haul. But aside from the requirements for Leia and the raid, let's just look at the character and the Scout Trooper's impact on the entirety of the Imperial Troopers right now. The Scout Trooper's making a great impact already on troopers, but not in the way I think most people wanted to see. So this leads into one of my first problems. Problem number one, when we originally looked at the kit reveal, when we were doing AHN on the go, the theory crafting possibilities of this character was through the roof. Originally on strategic assessment, Scout Trooper was able to dispel all debuffs on all allies, period. End of the line. However, kind of last second, CG decided to, I don't know if it's nerfed because technically Scout Trooper wasn't out yet, but they definitely made some big changes where Scout Troopers cleanse and many of their abilities are tied to Imperial Remnant. Only able to cleanse debuffs on all allies if the ally leader is Imperial Remnant, which really at this point, only Gideon. I'm a little disappointed on one side because this would have been a fantastic way of taking out Lord Vader even easier with Imperial Troopers. Imagine Veers with Scout Trooper cleanse and all the extra assists that Scout Trooper brings to the table. Yeah, that would have been pretty gnarly. But on the other hand, do you think we really want CG to hear us complain about Lord Vader even more and how he's a little too beatable? Yeah, at least they tested their game, which can't be said for Leviathan. Point aside. That's kind of where my first problem comes in. This is a character that could have been utilized in so many different aspects of the game in terms of the troopers in general. Ultimately, as I'm going to show you here, it's really containing the Scout Trooper inside of the Imperial Remnant crew. Not to say you can't use Scout Trooper with Veers, you could, but so much of the kit is just cut off if it's not full Imperial Remnant. It's not Imperial Remnant lead. And in my testing, I'm just not finding a situation where Scout Trooper is making a material difference for the Imperial Troopers with Veers and Piet. And if you've been following what's been going on with these new characters, generally I always call it trickle-down swoganomics, where when something comes into the game, it starts at the high end and eventually trickles its way down. So although a lot of you guys might not be feeling it right now who are using Imperial Troopers, you're eventually going to experience the wave of the new gen teams, ranging from Nisa, Zoris, Captain Rex, Tusken. Pretty much everything released so far in 2023 has been anti-Imperial Trooper. Seer June is another one. I guess Sauger is the one aspect where the troopers are able to keep up. Veers troopers, that is, to be clear. And often I get this confusion, like, oh no, why aren't you using Imperial Troopers? It's because they're having a hard time finding a place right now. Here's the upside. Scout Trooper is allowing the Imperial Troopers to keep up with those teams, at least in a 5v5 setting as I've seen. But there's a big BUT in there. It's not quite the team that people were hoping for with the General Veers league, because that's everyone's got it. It's gonna be with the Moff Gideon Imperial Remnants. Now, this isn't a bad thing necessarily. A lot of people have Gideon, and you probably have some Imperial Remnants to go with it, like Dark Trooper, and that's gonna lead into problem number, I don't know, 2, 3, I've lost track. Before we get into the Dark Trooper situation here, Moff Gideon is getting so many amazing bonuses with the Scout Trooper. He's leading the Imperial Troopers into an era where they can at least maintain competitiveness with this new generation of teams. I'm not ready to say this is like better than Captain Rex, better than Zori. Probably not right now. Keyword right now. But it's able to handle, at least it looks like, some Zori teams, the Captain Rex teams, even Tuskens, teams that mathematically Veers cannot handle. Up against Tuskens, Veers has almost like a 0% win rate. With Gideon, it was like almost a slam dunk max banners. That's a forward progression for the Imperial Troopers. Troopers. Same thing of Captain Rex and Zori, teams that could be a little bit complicated with the massive speed boost that Remnants get because of Scout Trooper and the massive speed that Gideon has, and he's able to control the situation. You're able to outrun, again, with Moff Gideon, a lot of teams out there because he can easily eke into the 400 speeds now. So I just want to say, Scout Trooper's doing an amazing job with keeping Imperial Troopers relevant, but not in the way people want with General Veers. And this comes into play the discussion of Dark Trooper. The second I started using Dark Trooper with Gideon, and that's the best use for Dark Trooper right now, in my opinion, in my neck of the woods, and it's going to end up in a lot of your guys' neck of the woods as these new teams become more acquired over the next year. It leaves people a bit disappointed about taking Dark Trooper away from Veers. It sounds wrong and dirty, right? Dark Trooper is what enabled General Veers to really elevate into a new era, and then of course alongside Admiral Piet. But now with all these anti-turn meter gains and teams that just get so much speed, with our full team of Imperial Remnants that we finally have, Scout Trooper Gideon, Dark Trooper, Stormtrooper, and Death Trooper, what we're seeing with the Moff Gideon lead, it's not a very turn meter heavy team, but it's able to control the situation with the turn meter gains on other teams, pulling them back, controlling fast characters, able to minimize the damage output on the other team, but with the tactical deployment leadership ability, what we're getting is we're getting a massive boost of offense and a massive amount of health, protection, durability, and they also have their own kind of offense ramping mechanism. Whenever the enemy with the leader tag uses an ability, Imperial Trooper allies are getting 10% offense, continuously stacking, so it's kind of like a passive Emperor's Trap. Whenever an enemy with the leader tag takes a turn, Moff Gideon gains a stack of insight. But here's another big thing. Imperial Trooper allies have an additional 25% offense and revive, so kind of like Night Sisters with 50% health and protection. So they're bringing tons of durability, lots of offense stacking, and revive capabilities, making them, at least in this new generation, a more fundamental, durable, offensive powerhouse team. So in the scope of Scout Trooper then, what Scout Trooper's bringing to the table, so long as the allied leader is an Imperial Remnant squad, an Imperial Remnant, Scout Trooper's getting a ton of turn meter, and realistically, speed is not an issue on this character. Moff Gideon's gonna basically be your main turn meter driver. As long as he's fast, you're not even gonna notice how slow or fast Scout Trooper is. They're getting so much turn meter at the end of the day through their unique ability. But the other problem is the unique ability on Imperial Vanguard on Scout Troopers really just has almost no use for any non-Remnant team, because again, if the allied leader slot is Imperial Remnant and no other allies that use Emperor's Trap, so i.e. Admiral Piet, you're getting an extra 20% max health and 20 speed on Gideon. But we're not done yet. Whenever an Imperial Trooper ally begins their turn, you get the whole Emperor's Trap thing. I will admit this, I was not crazy about the Emperor's Trap. It made a lot of sense on a Veers team being able to get like hundreds of stacks Emperor's Traps, and it keeps the turn meter train rolling. It's very microscopic. I don't know if that's the right word. It's not making a meaningful impact, it seems, but when we consider all those offensive gains that we dropped on you just a moment ago, Emperor's Trap, you can usually get maybe like, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. Every little bit of Emperor's Trap with its extra potency and offense does make a bit of a difference on the Imperial Remnant squad. And then furthermore, this really sucks too. The Imperial Remnant allies get an extra 10 speed. It sucks. It's not even all Imperial Troopers. It's just Imperial Remnant. So on the plus side, here's what I'll say. If you do want to use Veers and Scout Trooper, you could. It's not as good against these new gen teams like Moff Gideon. You could potentially do, like, for example, Veers, Piet, Dark Trooper, Scout Trooper with Gideon. Gideon's going to get an extra 10 speed just because he's an Imperial Remnant ally, but you're going to miss out on an extra 20 speed because he's not leading in that situation. The problem is I don't quite think that extra 10 speed on Gideon is going to make much of a difference over using Range Trooper General Veers. If you're really adamant on keeping Dark Trooper with Veers, I'm just not feeling that big impact out of Scout Trooper. We're seeing that Dark Trooper hits very hard with the Gideon team, and it's awesome to see. We have another way of calling an assist. You already have Gideon with this control situation calling an assist. Strategic assessment is truly the big ability on this character, and of course the ability bolstering the speed on Gideon and all the other bonuses we talked about. Getting to cleanse, that's a big deal. Unfortunate only again if the allied leader's Imperial Remnant. Getting the speed up on Imperial Remnant allies and being able to call the target other ally to assist. You're always probably going to be calling in Dark Trooper for the assist. But furthermore, getting the expose and stagger on all the enemies for 2 turns and dazing a target enemy is a huge deal. Generally what happens is Moff Gideon goes first. Control the situation. Yank back the enemy turn meter, giving you a head start. Scout Trooper's likely going to go right after Gideon, hitting the enemy team with the expose and stagger. And then you have things like Dark Trooper, Death Trooper, using an AoE ability to yank back all the turn meter that the enemy team is trying to build up, giving you a really explosive explosive opening play. After that, I'll be honest, the only interesting things with Scout Trooper is the Imperial Precision. It has a buff dispel, which does come in handy to get around the damage immunities from the Finn Zori teams and other taunts. Everything else about this character, yeah, you know, I'm not noticing anything too great, although the basic ability does give offense up, and again, offense up with the offensive gains in the lead, all these extra bonus damage, Emperor's Trap, it does make a big difference having offense up on the basic ability. And before we kind of tie all this together, I just want to say this character, because it has stealth mechanics, Scout Trooper is extremely viable at low stars. Pretty much all the gameplay you're seeing here, this character is a 3-star machine. Because you're relying on Moff Gideon to be fast, controlling the situation, and because Scout Trooper goes under stealth quite a lot, that means Scout Trooper's not being targeted. And because of all the health and protection bonuses through the full Imperial Remnant squad of Gideon, you would be hard-pressed if I gave you a blind test and saying, hey, which one's the Gear 12, which one's not? You would be pretty surprised to know that all this gameplay, although it looks like I'm running Relic 7 for all of it, it was pretty much all Gear 11 3 stars. Very durable with Moff Gideon. That's the other problem with 3 stars on the other teams that we talked about. Not really as good because you don't get all those health protection bonuses. So the good news is, as you're leading up to Leia with the Scout Trooper Relic 7 requirement, you are going to get uses out of this character at 3 stars, so long as you keep it with Moff Gideon's Imperial Remnants. There is one more use that I would like to see. I think we need to wait till 5v5 comes out, although I'm not seeing a lot of stuff with General Veers. I think Imperial Remnants are going to be that new feature of Imperial Trooper meta, and even CG is kind of laying the groundwork for it. I do think there's a chance this character, I'm not sure about low stars, but I think there's a chance this character will work with Iden on defense and to try to minimize Wampa. Remember, before Wampa Omicron came out, roughly a month or so after Iden Versio came out, Iden Versio was freaking amazing on defense. Unfortunately, her reign was short-lived when Wampa Omicron came out. Very shortly after, she kind of became extinct on defense. We'll have to wait and see for 5v5 next month, but with strategic assessment, the expose and stagger and the unresistible days and the irresistible days could potentially shut down Wampa. If Wampa's always getting days, it can't counterattack, and it could lead to making a bit of an issue for Wampa. We'll have to wait and see if the data reflects that. But before we talk about that ult to the future, Moff Gideon is gonna be that, I think, #1 trooper team for most things out there. I did find I didn't like Moff Gideon for classic Darth Rev encounters. Veers is much better for that. A grand majority of teams you're going to encounter, Moff Gideon lead, as much as people, you don't want to hear it. Moff Gideon lead seems to be the new era for troopers. And here's what I'll say about Dark Trooper. Here's our little transition point with Dark Trooper. Remember, characters move, progress as metas changes. Look at C-3PO. People are mad when Commander Luke took C-3PO away from Padme, but it's just a better team. People are mad when Sana Starros took Cara Dune away from Mon Mothma. We got to understand that characters eventually grow and they find new homes, and that's good that they're finding new homes rather than falling into the past and becoming obsolete. Remember, Kyle Katarn's one of those characters that's not being heavily utilized right now. So we need to kind of get out of that mindset that a character needs to stay in one team and that's it. As much as it does pay me to see one of our favorite teams in the game, Dark Trooper might not be sticking to Veers for the foreseeable future. Just know that Dark Trooper is getting upgraded, and being able to start using Dark Trooper in a 5v5 situation in Imperial Remnant is kind of a big deal. But here's the silver lining. If you don't like that pill to swallow, that Dark Trooper's best use with all these new teams is with Moff Gideon lead. Here's the silver lining is this. Capital Games, they've already announced that there's a new Gideon coming, a new era for the Imperial Remnants. #1, in case you missed the news, Moff Gideon, there's a new, stronger Gideon coming, and people weren't sure if it was like a rework or maybe just some weird line. No, there's a brand new Gideon coming in a conquest. Now, they didn't specify the very next conquest. We're assuming the very next conquest. Malicos is going to be unlocked in roughly 3-4 weeks, which means that we'll be waiting for a new character or ship, I suppose. My prediction is Moff Gideon's going to be the last conquest unit wrapping up 2023. And the good news is this, although we're probably seeing for the next couple months before this new Gideon shows up, Dark Trooper is going to be utilized. Moff Gideon lead, the current one that we have. CG has stated that the new Imperial Remnant team down the road with, which I'm presuming to be Moff Gideon Beskar, they're saying that Dark Trooper is going to go back with Veers, and they do not have that expectation that Dark Trooper is going to be utilized with this brand new Gideon. So there's the good news. Although from now until Moff Gideon's unlocked December, January of next year, the good news is Dark Trooper will probably go back to Veers, but just keep in mind, Veers is having a hard time keeping up with the meta, and most Grand Arenas nowadays, I'm not using Imperial Troopers. So there's the good news. If you're sad about the fact that Dark Trooper's moving. It's gonna go back to Veers, but then my hope is that the Veers Trooper team doesn't just fall into the sunset and I just never see Dark Trooper again, because you guys know Dark Trooper makes me happy, and this makes me want to believe that Moff Gideon Beskar, as I'm gonna call it, Moff Gideon Dark Trooper, whatever you want to call, is probably gonna be kind of like Dark Trooper, probably a heavy-hitting character, because again, he was kind of the next evolution after the Dark Trooper, and it gets me really excited. I am beyond stoked to see this new Gideon. Absolutely love the Moff Gideon character, although I do feel like I'm a little disappointed with how rushed the whole Gideon sequence was towards the end of Mandalorian Season 3. Really excited to see the future of Troopers. Troopers are one of those teams that people just love, and we're very protective of our Troopers, and I just want to put out there again, that Scout Trooper, great at 3 stars, so long with Gideon leading. Moff Gideon is helping Troopers stay relevant until we get this brand new Gideon. Dark Trooper will eventually go back to General Veers as this new Imperial Remnant team rises with the Gideon in the future. And of course, it's great to see, on top of keeping Troopers relevant, the Scout Trooper, maybe not as plug-and-play vibe as we wanted to see with the rest of the faction, just because Scout Trooper is needed for Leia. That means you're getting a lot of bang per buck out of this character. 3-star viability, helping the Troopers, it's weird to say, kind of lifting Troopers to a relevancy, and needed for Galactic Legend. That's a pretty darn good package. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is gonna wrap it up for today. Just really wanted to sit here and reflect where the Troopers are overall the game. They've been taking a beating, and as much as I wanted to wear rose-colored glasses, Troopers were just not a part of my main game Grand Arena strategies, and I'm happy to see that's coming back to fruition. And as we already kind of told, there's an even bigger future down the road for them, so hopefully it's only gonna get better. Maybe not as better as you guys out there. Thank you so much for watching. Leave that like, comment down below, subscribe so you're not missing a thing. And always remember how it's great to be in the Empire today.
The sun never sets. We dominate. We're stronger together.